This episode in my journey through Don't Count It Drunk Out, What's Around the Corner, is probably my most favorite, and what I'm going to relate to now. I was raised by Irish immigrants, and we came to America in 1923, and they got jobs, and they started their journey through American life. But one day, my mother said to me, when I was working someplace, she said, "Ed, never forget, you must protect your paycheck." Now, that meant a lot to her because they had no unions back in those days, and if you didn't dot the I's, cross the T's, you could be fired very quickly. And as Irish immigrants, jobs were precious. So she passed that message on to me that you must protect your job at all times. Don't do anything to shoot yourself in the foot. Great lesson. Now, what happened here is I saw this put into practice. When I was in college, I got a summer job at a large manufacturing company in their tax department. For a summer job, it was a good job to have. My responsibilities were filing sales and use tax returns, which I enjoyed doing. It was fun. But the other members of this tax department were older than me. Um, they were all men except for one lady. And the lady tried to befriend me, but it didn't. It was a force on her part to be nice to me. I don't know why, but the men totally ignored me. I just went to work every day, and I did my job, and there was no socializing. If they were going to go to lunch, they never invited me. And, but remember what my mother had said: protect your job at all times. I just went along with that's how it was. That's just how it was. Well, this company got into very serious financial problems, and their principal lender was a major New York bank, and they were worried about loans getting repaid. So they went to the board of directors of this large organization and said, "We're going to force you to make changes." They let go the CEO, and they let go of the treasurer, who, in all the people I met in my life, was a horrible individual. He demonstrated no respect for the people who worked for him. So he was not very high on my popularity list. And he once said to me, "Young man, you're a liability to us. You know nothing. So until you learn something, you're actually working for nothing with us." I was quite taken back by that when he insulted me. But again, my mother said protect the job, so I didn't talk back to him. He was a big shot in this organization, and I went about my job. Well, because of the bank called for a reorganization, the CEO was let go, and the treasurer, who I just talked about, was also let go. Now, meanwhile, they had hired a Jewish fellow to work in this tax department. Wonderful guy, a little older than me, well educated, just a super guy. For some reason, I've always gotten along well with Jewish people. I'm very, very grateful to them. They treated me so well my whole business career. And I can't say enough thanks to Jewish people for the many accomplishments I've had in my life. So this fellow was hired while the existing treasurer was still working there. And he also was ostracized by the other department personnel, including the treasurer. And then the Jewish fellow found out, because he confided to me, they were making jokes about him and his Jewish heritage. And his name was Ed. And Ed and I would go to lunch on a regular basis. We're the only two guys who befriended each other in this tax department. So we go to lunch. We like going to Chinatown and have lunch together. Just a wonderful individual. But he told me how hurt he was by the other fellas in the tax department ignoring him because he was convinced they were anti-Jewish. And me, I like everybody. I'm not anti-anybody. So he was convinced the reason they turned their back on him because he was Jewish. All I knew was he was a wonderful guy, well educated. Him and I got along great. Well, here comes what I said before. You don't know what's around the corner. This reorganization developed. CEO out. The treasurer out. The treasurer was in charge of the tax department. All of a sudden, in this reorganization, the Jewish fellow who was ostracized by his fellow workers in the trustee tax department, he was made the new treasurer. He's now the boss over the same people who were anti-Jewish, in his opinion. And we would talk about it, and he'd say, Ed, it's a very valuable lesson you're learning here. Be careful. Be careful how you treat people. Because someday they may be your boss. And lo and behold, Ed became the treasurer of this tax department, and with a glee in his eye, he started to fire the bigoted people who were anti-Jewish. And what a lesson I learned from that. You better show respect to everybody, regardless of what their religious background is, what their gender is, what their color is, etc. You must always protect your paycheck, which I did. But these other fellas who were anti-Jewish, they didn't learn that lesson. But when Ed became their boss, they learned very, very quickly. They had to go home and tell their families why they lost their jobs. Thank you very much.